Rutherford Issues with Brian Barrett on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford Issues is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric, and they're powering the fun family event this weekend, Rutherford County Earth Day. It's going to be on Saturday, 10 to 2. You don't want to miss it. Bring the kids to the square for this free event again. Kids Zone, hands-on games, activities. They're going to have a blast. You're going to be stuffing your face with free hot dogs and popcorn and gourmet grilled cheese from Middle Tennessee Electric. MTE is proud to have continued as the primary sponsor and organizer of the event for now 25 years. rcearthday.com for more details. It's Saturday, 10 to 2. All right, we head to the state's capital city of Nashville and to the state capitol, where we find State Representative Mike Sparks, passing bills and spending money. Hey, Mike.
Well, we are. Right now I'm sitting on the porch of the Capitol East porch, and they're honoring a few lawmakers that are retiring. Johnny Garrett's running for Congress. Deborah Moody is retiring, and Bud Holsey, he's standing here about 8 feet from me. Tried to get him to come on the radio. He don't want to. He said, "I will." He said, "I will." And in a few days, he wants to blast the Senate, but he don't want to do it till he gets his bills passed. That's what he's telling me. But I got to tell you about this guy. He's a 30.
You just let the cat out of the bag.
Well, I know he's sitting over here.
Can't tell you anything, man.
Well, he's a retired 36-year law enforcement veteran. Just such a great guy. He's got all these. He's from Kingsport and country's cornbread, but I always got tickled. One day he shared, there was an alcohol bill or something on the floor up here a few years ago, and, I don't drink. I don't vote on alcohol bills. And he stood up and said, he said something about, somebody asked him, I think, "Why are you carrying this bill?" I think he had the bill, and he said, I'm half Scotch and half Irish. That means half of me wants to get drunk, the other half don't want to pay for it. And everybody just bust out laughing up here, but he's got all these quips but he said something very poignant in committee. Well, just now on the floor, he says, I've got grandkids. And he said, "I want y'all to make good decisions up here for life, liberty, and the future, and, freedom of, and stand firm on the Constitution for my grandbabies." And it was very touching, because I have grandkids. You have, you got one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she is 11 months old today, actually.
Yeah, and it does make you look at life a little different, and you worry. And I'm sitting here looking at the traffic over here on, what is that, the 4024 Mercer here, and it's going good, but most of the time it's backed up. It takes
well, there was
an hour
did you have to get home. Did you have trouble getting in this morning? We're working on a story now about a crash on 24 between Sam Ridley and I guess
Waldron.
Well, anyway, the Hamilville Road. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Between those two this morning, and maybe a fatality. That happens. It's like every day there's an accident on 24.
It really does. And, I'm in it. Brian and I are in it. Robert Stevens and I are in it. Tim Rudd's in it. And Charlie Baum's in it. I've got the shortest distance, but it's still rough. Like I say, it's an hour and a half to get in here sometimes. You might make it in 40 minutes if there's not much going on. But you look at those issues, and just Murfreesboro Road, for example, you've heard me share this on the air, and I shared it with THP and Homeland Security. I was giving that nurse a ride to Unit School last summer, because she's a nurse at Unit up there, and giving her their summer school in the fall, and her van kept breaking down. And fortunately, mechanics on a mission hooked her up with a late model vehicle. So shout out to those folks. But man, I'm gonna tell you, you see the traffic from Laverne. It starts not quite at the Laverne border right there where that guy killed that girl, running from the law. That just happened 2 weeks ago. That hit, and I guess it'd be when he stole the truck and killed the young 23-year-old girl. But I'd request some more troopers through there, because you don't see Metro. If you try to call them 862-8600, you're going to be put on hold. But it is dangerous, and folks, it's just changed a lot since I was a kid. My mother worked at the airport, so I'd often, ride up there to Nashville with her or something, or drive up there in my old '68 Camaro or my '77 Celica to go to work to airport back in the day. But yeah, man, it's if something happened to me, it's going to be more likely, in a traffic accident. And but it is unfortunate what happens today on our highways and byways.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've had a text question about this, and so I'm just going to ask. So apparently, House Bill 925, Senate Bill 1158 would change the radius from the Capitol from 50 miles to 25 miles, and obviously that would impact even legislators here in Rutherford County with added per diem and hotel expenses and things like that.
Yeah.
Did that pass? Is it going to pass? I mean,
I don't know where the bill is. It wouldn't affect me. I'm 22 or 23 miles. That used to be in effect years ago. That per diem. If folks don't know what we're talking about, it's fuel and the hotel reimbursement. I mean, these guys, like the guy standing right here beside me, these driving, 4 hours, 5 hours, and it's a 10-hour trip. When he comes in and he stays in Nashville, where somebody like Tim or Brian or Charlie, they're going to be driving this every day, 4 days. And so you figured that's 3 hours they're in traffic. So that's 12 hours, that they're going to be, stuck in traffic 4 days a week, 3 hours a day. It won't affect me. I mean, I won't be eligible for that. And I don't plan on supporting it, but I'm not sure where that bill is. We're so busy on my legislation. Yeah. Not sure when it comes up. We got 79 bills on the calendar today. We got an annexation bill that's a little controversial. I know I can just share my bill. One of my most important issues, my workforce development bill, which is the school bus age bill, and looks like the governor's office is killing it. I probably shouldn't share on the radio, but it passed the Senate on consent. But it's after that issue over that tragic accident 3 weeks ago, and unfortunately 2 children died. But my bill has nothing to do with that. I mean, that driver was 43, and what happened? A lot of times we make knee-jerk reactions, and it's emotional, and that's what's sad when you have tragedy like that one in Chattanooga. There was 6 children died. That driver was 24, so they changed it to 25, which what people don't realize, here Buddy is just 6 feet from me, just a great guy who doesn't want to go on the radio. But we talk about freedom and liberty and workforce development and free markets and put people back to work. That was a knee-jerk reaction what happened down there in Chattanooga, and they made it, we're the most restrictive in the world, not only just the nation, Brian, in the world. If you want a career, in driving a bus or you wouldn't do that to the trucking industry, but to the school bus industry. And that guy that did that also raped a 14-year-old girl. And that's what frustrates me. That's why I've been studying that poem. I can't never get it right, but the Serenity poem. God grant me the serenity for the things and the hope of the things I can change, and the patience for things I can't change, something like that, because it does get you very frustrated. But I just got to count my own blessings. In fact, I'm going to try to meet with the governor today. It's going to be difficult, but it's emotional. And I reminded some folks today that Pat Marsh, one of them, owns Big G Trucking, that he wouldn't want that in the trucking industry, but we're going to allow this in this industry and be the most restrictive in the world. And my bill is also permissive, which allows us local LEAs to decide that. But it's frustrating. I was thinking about that song last night. You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And I just have to have the patience and think that, maybe the Lord's got a bigger plan for this, and he always has worked in my life. But back on the per diem, that's not going to affect me. I'm not sure where it's at.
Let me ask you this question. You've brought up your former cohort there from Kingsport. Would you do what you're doing now if you had to if you lived in Kingsport and you didn't have to drive?
That's a great question, and Bud's walking off over here now, and he's such a great guy, man. He's just so down to earth. Like I say, brings a lot of experience up here, especially his law enforcement background. And that I've often thought about that because, my marriage matter. I mean, we just celebrated 37 years of marriage. I mean, we'll be together 40 years, the 19th, and got 2 new grandbabies. And my dad was married 5 times. He was a hardcore military man, World War II, and had me late in life. And I always knew I had to work hard on my marriage. And it would be very, very, very challenging.
I think
was asked to run for this. Well, I was asked to run when I was 33 by the Republican Party, Donna Barrett, and others. And I just said, I'm going to go home and pray about this for a week. And I went home and I knelt down beside my bed just saying, Lord, give me wisdom, give me discernment, give me direction. Because this is a big life choice for me. I had just left Nissan and in the process of starting my own business. And I just felt it in my gut. It's like, don't do this. You're not ready at 33. And then that's when I was, Bob Spivey asked me, the former mayor asked me to run for county commission. And that gave me a lot better plan and a little bit more foundation. Up here, I've learned to be a little bit more patient, and I don't get mad at Democrats and want to scream and yell and try to get along with folks. In fact, Justin Pearson sat beside me yesterday. A lot of folks know him. He's out of Memphis. He voted for my school bus bill.
You mean what you did when you were in the county commission?
Well, people say I stood up on the desk griping, but I've learned, man. You're working with 20 others there. Up here, I'm working with 98 other people. Then you got the Senate. Then it's like the governor. I'm a little upset with the governor right now, to be honest with you. And I like the guy. He's such a good guy, but it's a knee-jerk reaction. And people are like, well, can you just roll it to next year? I'm like, what if we have a wreck next year? I mean, this is a work. My bill puts people to work, and it helps a crisis. There's no other bill that does that. And, and I probably, like I said, I shouldn't share us on air, but, I went to him about that predatory lending bill where interest rates got raised last year by Tennessee General Assembly, Democrats and Republicans. Raise interest rates on these little title pawn, check into bankruptcy, all this crap that I just disdain. I think it's evil. It's just demonic. We're abusing people, and he didn't want to veto that, but he's going to threaten to veto this. What they do, they just kill it in committee without a vote. I don't think that's what our founding fathers intended for the process should play out. It's like I told the chief of staff last night. I went and talked to him and some other folks and our leader, and I said, he said, well, it's such a bad time. I'm like, but that's why we have debates. Put it on the floor. If it gets to the floor, I know the bill will pass, and let him veto it if he wants to veto it, and let us continue. It'll be his fault that we're the most restrictive in the world. I can't make this stuff up.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be that way anyway, right? I mean, it's going to be his fault one way or another.
It's just so it is very frustrating. But I was driving home last night, man. My wife was upset, and I just was like, thank God, I've got my health. Thank God I got a beautiful family. I got a beautiful wife. Thank God we live in a great community. And I just started having to count my blessings because legislature is a frustrating place, man. Well, it really is. I mean, I don't know if my colleagues feel that way, but it's very frustrating. That's why I thought about that song. You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. But the Lord always has provided for me, and He's always had a bigger plan than I've had. And I wish I knew where that scripture is where, our thoughts are not His thoughts, and His thoughts are much higher than our thoughts. And I just have to trust in Him. And like Proverbs 3:5-7, trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct our path. And the 7, a lot of people forget the 7. The 7 is refrain from evil. Mitigate those risk of evil that's in our life. But yeah, we were in the budget yesterday, and I didn't get my budget request, but I knew it was going to be hard. Got that documentary I want to work on with Rutherford County, Smyrna, and Nissan and Japanese coming together. I think Smyrna has the best story in the whole wide world, the nation, to tell the story about reconciliation, forgiveness, working together. And we dropped 2 atomic bombs on that nation. Now we have 206 Japanese companies producing jobs, just like Nissan, where I work, my mother-in-law worked, my brother-in-law worked, my wife's cousin worked, other family members that changed our community. Seward Air Force Base was a bomb and training base. I shared the idea with Marsha Blackburn. She loved the idea. Haggerty met with some film commissioner. They are working on a film, but it doesn't have the same theme and narrative that what my idea is. Mine's working together, working with folks you may disagree with, and I think it could be a recruitment tool for economic development and recruit more Japanese companies. And the Japanese have been great strategic partners with us on a global scale as well. But if it wasn't for Nissan and Datsun, our little small community, I mean, the Japanese-American, Tennessee Business Alliance, I met with them, with the filmmakers, Sammy Arnold. He told me, he said, Mike, before Nissan came, before Datsun came, Tennessee was the third most impoverished state in the nation. I didn't know that. And then they lifted up, they helped with that partnership. And you got to give McWhorter, a Democrat, and Alexander, kudos for working together, working across the aisle to bring those jobs to Tennessee. And but I didn't get that in the budget. I feel confident I'll do it next year. But you don't always get what you want,
Yeah. So I've got a very short amount of time, but Linda asked the question, why are we unable to consider a commuter train along 24 from Murfreesboro to Nashville?
Well, I used to ask that question to Bob Spivey. Bob was brilliant business guy. He developed all three quadrants of Sam Ridley Parkway on Target, Cracker Barrel. He owned Starbucks. I used to ask that question. I was his choice for planning, and he was nominated. So I didn't want to sit by him, but he made me sit by him right there, and I didn't want any undue influence. And Bob was a very influential guy, and but Bob was his way or the highway. He was like Donald Trump. I used to ask him that. He said, "Well, we'd have to take so much right-of-way acquisition throughout that whole corridor." He said, he used to say a lot of those buildings like Trading On Post, the Omni Hut, Rayburn Insurance, a lot of that would have to come out. And but CSX is a difficult group to work with, and that's a great question. I know there is a study that we allocated here, but I think it's still being talked about. I think it's going to be difficult. But on the way in, I was telling somebody the other day, Roger Thomas, I believe it was, I remember carpooling with a lady when I worked at the factory at Whirlpool when I was 19, 20, 21, pay her $5 a week. You don't see people carpooling today. I don't hardly ever see that. And the WeGo has a lot of empty seats on the way in. In fact, I'm looking at the WeGo station right now. They've improved security over there. There was shooting over there last year, and a lot of challenges. I wish we could do rail. I think it's I don't think it'll happen in our lifetime. It'll probably happen, but in my son's time to your family's time.
Well, Mike, I guess on that note, we will kind of end our session here today. I would like to remind folks they can listen to you Sunday nights, 5 o'clock, and you've got another conversation with Mike Sparks show this weekend, I guess.
Yes, Sunday, 5 to 6. Thank you, Brian, for what you do. Thank you for what WGNS is, because I had an article today that Channel 5 covered. It was all fake news. I think they use AI to tell their whole story. I used a quote. I put in there. I said, "May Christ comfort the families, the school bus victims, with peace and understanding." And you know what Channel 5 did? They took out the whole quote about Christ, censored it all, and then the whole story was misrepresentation. They apologized for it, but the damage is already done. But thank you for y'all telling the truth and being a good neighbor station.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you. That is State Representative Mike Sparks joining us here on the show today. That's going to wrap up our time. Hey, friends, don't forget, we've got maybe some rough storms tonight. Maybe. We're going to have storms. How bad they are, we'll figure that out. But be sure to check us out on Rutherford Weather. And Mike will be back this weekend on Saturday night with his show, so hope you'll tune in for that. Until next time, take care out there.